Chapter 876, Spiked Club. Once Su Ming swept his gaze over the 13 zealous people on the ground. He cast a glance at Yu Ru before he turned his head around and looked at the gigantic image of peace arrives when the elephant is here behind him. He had devoured Yu family's progenitor and obtained some of his memories of the Third Age. Within those memories were some of the areas of the Divine Essence Star Ocean, as well as the reason why he had fused with the enchanted vessel all those years ago. Within Divine Essence Star Ocean is a place known as the place where spirits died. Su Ming's eyes sparkled. From the memories he obtained from Yu family's progenitor, he knew that the man had entered Divine Essence Star Ocean to search for the signs of the Gate of Tao race based on the clues left behind by the previous generations within the Yu family. They had spent a long period of time to find traces of the Gate of Tao race during his generation, a lot of it courtesy to Yu Han. When he delved deep into Divine Essence Star Ocean, he discovered the 3 gates of Heavenly Tao and also that the place was a spot where spirits died. This so-called spot where spirits died could be considered an ancient ruin. It was the place where the tribes at the height of their power worshipped the gods countless years ago, in an age even before the alien races came into existence. After time passed, even though there were still plenty of alien races within Divine Essence Star Ocean, most of them had branched out from the prosperous tribes and gradually increased in number on their own. Because of this, very few of these alien races had completely inherited their legacy. As for the tribes that had been at the height of their power in the past, most of them were destroyed due to a disaster that not even Yu family's progenitor knew about. Even the gods they worshipped had either died or fell into deep sleep. That was the case for the sun god and moon goddess of the Gate of Tao. They were severely injured and sank into deep sleep. The place where their real bodies slept was the region known as the place where spirits died in Divine Essence Star Ocean. Su Ming was certain that these memories were trustworthy because when he devoured the sun god and moon goddess, he could tell clearly that they had not truly died. He had only devoured a part of them, and based on the words they said before they disappeared, Su Ming knew that their real bodies were not in Black Ink Planet. Based on this judgment, Yu family's progenitor discovered that the place where spirits died was where the sun god and moon goddess slept. It was also due to the mysteries in that place that Yu family progenitor's soul was sucked into the 3 gates of Heavenly Tao for some unknown reason. After that, since his body no longer had any life force supplied to it, it became increasingly weaker and soon started rotting away, like a dead man's. He dragged his rotting body and the 3 gates of Heavenly Tao back to his family in Black Ink Planet. Since his body continued rotting every single day, by the time he finally arrived, he could no longer persevere. His body disintegrated, and he died. However, after his body was destroyed, he discovered that he had not died, but was contained within the treasure that was peace arrives when the elephant is here. In fact, he even realized that the vessel spirit within the enchanted vessel was also deep in sleep, which allowed him to temporarily become the vessel spirit. After tens of thousands of years of examination and puzzling it out, he mastered the strange power within the 3 gates of Heavenly Tao. With this, he secretly affected all the family members who came to challenge the 3 gates of Heavenly Tao to find those who could help him in his plan to escape. Under his arrangement, some of the incredibly outstanding family members managed to get to the 3rd gate of Heavenly Tao, but they had not done so by obtaining the sun god and moon goddess acknowledgement in the 2nd gate of Heavenly Tao. They had only managed to get to the 3rd gate of Heavenly Tao with his help. However, after multiple attempts, Yu family's progenitor realized that he could not possess the members of Yu family. Because of this, he had guests also challenge the 3 gates of Heavenly Tao. Yet in the end, he discovered that he could possess neither his family members nor the guests. It was as if there was something missing within them. After many years of investigation, he gradually found the reason. They lacked a form of power from the gods. Only by possessing those who had this power would he be able to move out of this place. That was why the subsequent sequence of events had occurred. Yu family's progenitor was incredibly wary of the 2nd gate of Heavenly Tao and did not dare to get too close to it. He would only affect it in secret, because that place was the key to him becoming free. After mastering the strange power in the place after being trapped in this place for tens of thousands of years, his heart had become twisted. He wanted to devour the apostle, because the apostle had been acknowledged by the 2nd gate of Heavenly Tao, and the power of the gods would surely be contained within him. The guests who had managed to come to the 3rd gate were all killed by him in the place. In fact, Some of the members of the family who did not have zealous faith in him were also killed. With the cooperation of the handful of family members who ventured out, the information that he was inside was kept secret. This continued until Yu Ru appeared thousands of years ago. When she arrived at the second gate of Heavenly Tao, she had been slightly acknowledged. This brought Yu family's progenitor great excitement, and he attempted to possess her. However, he failed in that possession. The power of the gods within Yu Ru was still too little. It was not enough for Yu family's progenitor to succeed. After he failed, he did not kill Yu Ru, but instead kept her around, hoping that she would grow up and become his way out. All of these were the memories Su Ming obtained from Yu family's progenitor. When he turned his head around to look at the third gate, his eyes shone. He was incredibly interested in the place where spirits died, which belonged to the gate of Tao race. He lifted his right hand slowly and pushed it towards the third gate. The elephant's body shuddered, and bright light shone in its eyes. At the same time, the mountain rock shrank under the light and charged over at Su Ming. When it landed on his palm, it turned into a white mountain rock. It looked like a piece of jade and was incredibly smooth. The white elephant on it looked as if it was alive, and the scale beam was even branded on the rock. It was emitting a gentle light. The precious treasure. Peace arrives when the elephant is here. As Su Ming held the treasure in his hand, he sensed the power of divine essence within him boiling, as if it wanted to surge into the treasure completely. However, Su Ming could also sense clearly that unless his Yikan clone was here, he would only be able to activate a hint of the power within this treasure with his clone that practiced the art of swallowing hollow shadows whole. Only his Yikan clone would be able to awaken the vessel spirit within the treasure with the vast amount of divine essence he possessed, and only then would he be able to have it acknowledge Su Ming as its owner in order to activate part of its might. If he wanted to bring out the full power within the treasure, then his Yikan clone would need to devour another soul or even several of the other souls from the other 9 Yikan souls. Peace arrives when the elephant is here. What a treasure! Su Ming mumbled. He flung his right hand outwards, and the mountain rock on his palm disappeared. Then with another swing of his arm, he walked towards the ground from midair. Just as he was about to descend, a thought suddenly appeared in his mind, and he turned his head around to look at Tao Avenue Mountain. The mountain looked like it was made of clouds who were in the shape of a mountain. The black parts around the white mountain rocks formed the head of the malicious spirit. In fact, if someone looked at it for a prolonged period of time, they would have the false impression that the malicious spirit's hair was dancing. When Su Ming looked at the bat that could not escape from the malicious spirit's right hand, he swiftly seized the air in the direction of Tao Avenue Mountain. The mountain let out a bang and started trembling. "Come here." Su Ming let out a cold harumph. The veins on his right hand popped up, and at the instant he seized the air forcefully, Tao Avenue Mountain began trembling even more furiously. With a bang, the entire mountain rose from the ground and charged towards Su Ming. The swift movement reverberated in the air as the mountain closed in on Su Ming in the blink of an eye. At that moment, he lifted his right hand and swung it. "Become small." The mountain shrank swiftly. Smaller. With another bang, Tao Avenue Mountain shrank once again. However, at the instant it shrank this time, a focused glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and he took a step forward to appear before Tao Avenue Mountain, which was now only several hundreds of feet big. When he looked at a certain spot located at the back of the mountain, his eyes sparkled. He saw that there was a huge crack behind the mountain rock, and there were several holes at the top of the crack, as if they had been left there after something with spikes struck it. The crack also brought the image of a club with spikes to Su Ming's mind. The damage to the mountain was clearly caused by this sort of weapon. This Tao Avenue Mountain is clearly also a treasure. I won't need as much divine essence to activate it as I would need for peace arrives when the elephant is here, but it's still considered a large amount to me. Still, it's slightly easier to use compared to peace arrives when the elephant is here. But such a grievous injury has been left on this divine essence treasure, and the mark of this crack seems rather familiar. Su Ming frowned. After thinking about it carefully, a shudder suddenly ran through his body, and a brilliant light shone in his eyes. He had seen a type of weapon that could cause this sort of crack before. Spiked club. Su Ming's breathing quickened slightly. He remembered why it was familiar now. He once had a spiked club that could change its size at will. When it fell against the ground or mountains, the cracks that would show up would be like this. I obtained that spiked club at the bottom of the sea, from within the endless layer of ice around the region where Great U Imperial Palace was frozen. There was an endless amount of strange-looking people frozen in that ice. I was wondering about it in the past. Could it be? Su Ming cast a scrutinizing glance at Dao Avenue Mountain. After remaining silent for a moment, he suddenly had even more speculations towards the mysteries of Yin Death Region. Yin Death Region, my homeland, the place where I grew up. Only now as I come into contact with the worlds outside, do I realize that the secrets there are also fathomless. Su Ming shook his head. He would definitely return to Yin Death Region, and at that time, he would find all the greatest secrets of Yin Death Region to answer all of his questions. He pointed towards Dao Avenue Mountain with his right index finger. The mountain shrank once again and turned into an object that looked like a piece of jade on his palm. At the instant Su Ming touched the mountain, a thought appeared in his mind. He lowered his head and cast a glance at the item in his hand before putting it away while looking as if he was absorbed in his thoughts. Then, he landed on the ground. At the instant he descended, the 13 old men in front of him prostrated themselves on the ground, as if kneeling was no longer sufficient to express the respect they had in their hearts, and only by prostrating themselves on the ground would they be able to do so. Greetings, progenitor. Prepare a secret chamber for me. I will isolate myself to meditate for several days. Su Ming stated flatly. His words sent the 13 old men into action while they burned with zealous passion. Soon, an incredibly extravagant chamber was prepared for Su Ming. When I come out several days later, I will release all of you from the life of being unable to bask under the sun. Su Ming took a step forward and moved into the chamber. As the door fell shut with a loud boom, the 13 old men prostrated themselves on the ground in respect. Only Yu Ru's eyes were sparkling. She was an incredibly beautiful woman to begin with, and as her beautiful eyes sparkled, they gave rise to a striking image that could take a person's breath away. Su Ming immediately sat down cross-legged in the chamber and sucked in a deep breath. He placed his hands on his knees with his palms turned upwards. White light shone on his hands, and the treasure that was peace arrives when the elephant is here as well as Dao Avenue Mountain appeared at the same time. At the instant Su Ming closed his eyes, his body trembled, and the image of the statues that belonged to the sun god and the moon goddess manifested behind him. The power that will exist as long as I believe in it will now belong to me. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath, and booming sounds immediately reverberated in the chamber. Chapter 877. Malicious spirit weighing an elephant. On a normal occasion, there would probably be only one type of light. However, at that moment, light was divided into two types. One of them was the overbearing, strong type of light, and the other was a gentle, weak type of light. The brilliant light shining from the statues of the sun god and moon goddess illuminated the entire chamber, so each spot in the room was covered in light. The overbearing light did not intersect with the gentle light, but instead divided the room into two halves of a circle with Su Ming at the center. One side was incredibly domineering, while the other side was as gentle as flowing water. There were even two types of different colors shining on Su Ming's shut eyes, so his body looked as if it had been segregated at that instant. A line running vertically down the center of his nose separated his body into two different halves, and those two halves were illuminated by a strong ray of light and a dim ray of light respectively. Su Ming's palms were turned upwards and placed on his knee, with Dao Avenue Mountain lying on this right hand. At that moment, while covered by the light, the treasure gradually gave off a feeling as if it had come to life. As the malicious spirit became increasingly more ferocious, the bat on its hand screeched. After a moment, the malicious spirit on Dao Avenue Mountain whipped its head around. As its entire body was twisted, Dao Avenue Mountain floated into the air, and it turned into something akin to fog. It surrounded Su Ming, swimming between the strong and weak lights and giving him an incredibly bizarre air. Su Ming's expression remained calm. He still had his eyes closed. The treasure that was peace arrives when the elephant is here on his left hand let out a booming sound at that moment. As it slowly came apart, it turned into the illusory image of an elephant and a scale before it also swam around Su Ming with the malicious spirit. Power that will exist as long as I believe in it, appear. Su Ming opened his eyes swiftly, and the bright light in his eyes looked as if it wanted to fuse with the strong and weak light in the chamber. giving off the feeling that a third type of light had appeared in the place. At the instant he opened his eyes, the malicious spirit that was Tao Avenue swimming around him let out a roar towards the sky. As it roared, it lifted its left hand and seized the scale moving by its side. When the scale was in its hands, it seemed like the malicious spirit had turned into a person that would balance a scale. At the same time he did so, the elephant turned into a long arc and naturally appeared on the scale pan. All of this might have seemed to have happened over a long period of time, but in truth, the entire process was completed in the span of a few breaths. The malicious spirit's expression was no longer ferocious, but had instead an awe-inspiring air about it. At that moment, it seized the air and caught the bat to hang it on the scale beam. At the instant this was done, what appeared before Su Ming was a picture of a malicious spirit weighing an elephant. The bat was clearly the weight of the scale. All of this was perfect, so perfect that Su Ming could not find a single flaw in it. It was as if the entire thing was supposed to appear this way. The elephant has two forms. One of them is its physical form, and the other is the illusory form on the scale. An indistinct voice said from the malicious spirit's mouth in the form of a buzzing noise. The physical body of the elephant on the scale is like that of the form of the heavenly Tao, not the power of the antecedental spirit. The thought of weighing this elephant is like a fantasy, and it can allow you to weigh this elephant for the span of 3 breaths. The picture of the malicious spirit weighing the elephant lasted for about the span of 3 breaths in front of Su Ming before all of it turned into 2 long arcs that charged into his eyes. The malicious spirit that was Tao Avenue and the bat acting as the weight seeped into Su Ming's left eye before disappearing without a trace, while the elephant and the pan entered his right, and with a flash, they disappeared, too. A shudder ran through Su Ming's body. "Believe in me." As Su Ming mumbled to himself, a clouded look appeared in his eyes. He could truly sense the power contained within his eyes at that moment, because that power had taken the form of an incredibly loud voice in his mind. There was a supreme, awe-inspiring might contained in that voice. It sounded like a roar, and it was echoing endlessly in Su Ming's mind. He did not sense any form of danger from it, however. There was no spirit contained in that voice preparing to possess him either. This was a voice that had existed many years ago and seemed to have been left behind in the passages of time. That voice could not be heard normally. Only when a person was illuminated by the light from the sun god and moon goddess while coming into possession of the malicious spirit that was Tao Avenue as well as the elephant that represented peace and used divine essence to activate them so that the picture of the malicious spirit weighing the elephant would appear would that voice show up. Perhaps it was more accurate to say that the picture of the malicious spirit weighing the elephant was the core of the 3 gates of heavenly Tao, and the strange power contained within the 3 gates of heavenly Tao which Su Ming desired, was the 3 words in that sentence hidden in the picture of the malicious spirit weighing the elephant. "Believe in me." The voice continued echoing in his mind, and he had a feeling as if he was taken by it. The voice was hidden in that illusory picture, and the picture was concealed by the 3 gates of heavenly Tao. The voice and the 3 words were the core and source of the strange power. I didn't expect that the power I am obsessed with would be developed from this one sentence. Dark light shone in Su Ming's eyes. At that moment, he looked incredibly mystifying, and even his mumblings sounded as if they held a vague and insubstantial feeling in them. The ancient air contained in that sentence, with just it alone, such great power was gathered together. This is definitely not something the sun god and moon goddess were capable of doing. The 3 gates of heavenly Tao might have come into being even before the sun god and moon goddess. Perhaps more accurately speaking, this is a treasure left behind by an existence that is even more ancient than the sun god and moon goddess. Su Ming's heart beat quickly a few times. There was a dark light in his eyes, and he slowly tried to clench his fists without moving them away from his knees. "I will need to understand this power." Yu family's progenitor managed to understand some of it after groping about blindly, and he was capable of executing this sort of power. I can feel that if I grasp this power completely and absorb the strong and weak rays of light around me back into my body, then I will succeed. While he was in the process of slowly furling his hands into fists, the light in the chamber began twisting about intensely, as if it had turned into threads, and they were gathering around Su Ming's hands from all directions. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, 1 day went by. During that 1 day, Su Ming never blinked. The dark light in his eyes became increasingly stronger, while the edges of the chamber had turned black from their previously illuminated state. If anyone looked over, they would find the chamber to be an incredibly bizarre sight, as if light had been restricted to a particular region and was separated from the darkness around the area. It was as if there was a barrier that had divided them. Su Ming's face was illuminated in flashes of dim and bright light. An endless amount of red could be seen vaguely in the dark light in his eyes. He might have looked calm on the outside, but there was a storm raging in the depths of his heart. That voice still lingered around and echoed in his mind time and again, each sentence roaring in his head. In the beginning, that voice would only in a long while, but now, it seemed to have connected together with Su Ming's mind and continued echoing endlessly. Believe in me. Believe in me. Believe in me. There was no intonation within that ancient voice, and it had already replaced all of Su Ming's thought processes as well as his consciousness. It was as if his body was empty at that moment, and only that voice was continuously spreading out through him. All of this might seem dangerous, but in truth, Su Ming knew that the danger posed by this was not high. He had never let down his guard either. This was an attempt to gain an epiphany from a voice left behind from ancient times. If he succeeded, he would be able to obtain the power contained in the words, and if he failed, he would only fail, that was all. Another day went by, which meant that Su Ming had already sat in the chamber for 2 full days. There were countless echoes of that voice in his head by that point, and they were slowly showing signs of gathering once again instead of spreading outwards. When the 3rd day passed, the voices in Su Ming's head finally completed the process of merging into one instead of spreading out, and they turned into one sentence once again. Believe in me. This sentence seemed different compared to all the other sentences he had heard previously. He might not have been able to tell the difference, but at the instant the voice reverberated in his mind, a loud bang rang out in his head. In the mid of this loud bang, his consciousness was warped, as if his soul had been forcefully dragged to a strange world by that one sentence. That place was a broken piece of sky, which was dark blue and swiftly crumbling. Loud, booming sounds echoed in the universe. He could see pillars of light shooting through the galaxy to reach this place, bringing piercing whistles in their wake. Wherever they went, space would shatter, and the sky would break down. When these pillars of light landed on the ground, ring-shaped waves of impact were instantly formed, and as they swept outwards, layers upon layers of the ground were destroyed. It was as if this was the apocalypse, and the world was being destroyed at the moment. Believe in me. At that moment, a tremendous voice suddenly came from the ground. Su Ming looked over, and he instantly saw a person standing on a mountain situated on the crumbling ground that was rising and falling like waves. It was a young man dressed in a blue robe, with a head full of white hair. He had average looks, and looked so ordinary that there was nothing outstanding about him. However, there was a thick ancient air about him. It was as if he had experienced far too many things in his life, which resulted in him possessing a shocking presence that could not be described with words but would cause all people to be unable to forget it the moment they saw it. With hands placed behind his back, he stood at the top of the mountain. Grief was in his eyes. His robes fluttered and white hair danced to the wind. He seemed to be looking at the sky as his voice echoed in the air. Believe in me. Su Ming's heart trembled. He looked at the man and saw numerous living creatures kneeling down on the crumbling ground before him. These living creatures were trembling, clearly afraid of the world collapsing around them, but none of them got up to escape. They looked at the man with white hair as if his words were a form of conviction and deserved utmost respect. Someone once told me that those who believe in me will find that I will not die even if the world dies. Even if the world is destroyed, I will not be destroyed. Today, I will tell all of you this. Believe in me. Su Ming's heart trembled. Everything before his eyes shattered abruptly and turned into countless shards. As these shards danced about, they slowly disappeared before him. Su Ming opened his eyes. But perhaps it would be more accurate to say that his physical eyes had been open since the start, so the eyes he opened this time were the eyes of his soul. He was still in the chamber, and everything was dark around him. But in his left hand was a sun shining with a strong, overbearing light. In his right hand was a moon shining with a weak, gentle light. All the light in the chamber was gathered by the two of them. I understand now. An ancient air appeared about Su Ming's face. If anyone took a closer look, they would find that the ancient air about him was rather similar to the one about the man in blue. Chapter 878. Residual. It had been 17 days since Su Ming stepped into the chamber. The chamber was not located above ground, but was within the huge underground palace built under the many towers of the Yu family. The underground palace had been built tens of thousands of years ago, and it was the most secretive spot in the Yu family. At that moment, in the depths of the underground palace outside Su Ming's secret chamber were two gigantic stone flaps of a door that were interlaced with each other to form a ghastly door of hundreds of feet in size. There were numerous blood-red runic symbols on the door. As they shone in alternating flashes of bright and dark light, a powerful wave spread out from them. In fact, even if a cultivator in the later stage of World Plane Realm attacked at full force, they would find it hard to destroy the door within a short period of time. The 13 old men were sitting respectfully outside the door and meditating there as if they were Dharma protectors. Their zealous attitude towards Yu family's progenitor made them willing to give up their lives to provide protection for the progenitor. If anyone dared to break in at this point of time, they would find themselves coming face to face against the 13 old men's rabid attacks. Yu Ru was sitting to the side of the circle formed by the 13 old men. Her expression remained elegant as she sat by the side quietly, creating a stark contrast against these 13 old men. Her beauty was also something that did not fit into the eerie and decaying image the 13 people presented. The progenitor has entered isolation for 17 days. Could something have happened to him? After waiting for 17 days, one of the 13 old men could not help but become anxious. After all, before Su Ming had entered isolation to meditate, he had said he would be gone only for a few days. Quiet. The progenitor's level of cultivation is exceedingly high. How could anything possibly happen to him? This is clearly the progenitor absorbing the apostle's life force so that he could get greater control over his new body. Someone beside him immediately retorted. Clearly, the person who had rebuked the old man just now had a slightly higher status, so the old man who had been worried immediately lowered his head and did not say anything else. Not necessary. An ancient voice came languidly from a skeletal old man by the side. Did any of you ever think of the progenitor possibly failing to possess the apostle? That's impossible. With the progenitor's level of cultivation and the preparations he made over tens of thousands of years, there's no possible way he would have failed. That's right. What the seventh said is possible. What if he failed? If he failed, then the person who appeared before us previously was not the progenitor but the apostle. Many pairs of eyes of the 13 old men sparkled at that time as they communicated with each other by sending their thoughts. Only Yu Ru remained in the distance, quiet and not listening to any of their words. In the mid of their long wait and as doubts as well as speculations were gradually born within them, another 3 days passed. 20 days had passed since Su Ming stepped into the chamber. On this day, it was dusk in the world outside the underground palace. There was a gentle breeze blowing through the land, swaying the trees. It was at that moment that a booming sound suddenly echoed in the air within the underground palace. The appearance of this sound immediately caused the 13 old men to swiftly lift their heads and fix their eyes on the gate of the chamber. They also moved to kneel on the ground. That booming sound came from the door to the chamber. This was the sound of the door being slowly opened from within. As those booming sounds became increasingly louder, the doors swung open to reveal a slit in between. The slit gradually grew wider. After a moment, when the doors completely swung open, the 13 old men did not care about what sort of speculations they had in their hearts and immediately said respectfully, "We respectfully greet the progenitor." With a bang, the stone door swung completely open. It was dark inside. The green candle flames in the underground palace looked as if they wanted to venture deep into the darkness in the chamber, but were blocked outside the door. It was as if there was a force that could not be seen obstructing all forms of light from entering the room. The sound of footsteps gradually came from the darkness and echoed in the underground palace. That noise suggested that the owner was moving at a leisurely pace. Several breaths later, Su Ming's figure appeared within the stone chamber and was revealed before the people. His footsteps came to a halt, and he did not continue walking forward. He stood in the darkness. The dim green light one step away from him enveloped the area around him. Because of this, Su Ming was able to see the area outside clearly, but the people outside could only see a faint blur when they looked towards him. Su Ming did not respond to the old men's words. He stood in the darkness and swept his gaze across everyone, and a dead silence settled around them. It was as if even the sounds of breathing had disappeared. An oppressive feeling gradually rose in the air. The 13 old men could sense this incredibly clearly. They knelt on the ground and did not dare lift their heads. However, they could feel the pores on their bodies shrinking, and their hair rose. That was the instinctual reaction that a person would get when they were in the face of danger. It was precisely because they did not lift their heads that the feeling within them grew stronger. They could sense an incredibly evil presence spreading out from the chamber. It was a presence born from the perfect fusion between an overbearing and a gentle aura. That presence changed constantly, so no one was able to get a clear grasp on it. When it gave off that overbearing presence, it seemed as if it could destroy all lives, but when it was gentle, it gave a sticky feeling, as if it was a swamp that would prevent a person from climbing out the moment they stepped in. The 13 old men became no longer certain of their guesses, unable to discern the truth of things. As these 13 people were busy being nervous, Yuru remained calm by the side. However, that was just how she appeared. In truth, she was also shivering slightly, but those shivers were not distinct. Only after 10 breaths had passed did the presence gradually disperse. At the instant the 13 old men sighed in secret, Su Ming took the final step and walked into the light from the dark. His body appeared fully before everyone. Long grey hair, long white robes, and a boundless ancient air on that handsome face of his that was nigh enchanting. That ancient air did not seem to belong to him, but due to some reasons, some of it had come to temporarily stick around him. That ancient presence was definitely not intentional. If a person had not lived for a sufficient amount of years and had not seen through all forms of illusions, then this presence would definitely not appear. Because of this ancient air, the hearts of the 13 old men trembled. The waning presence on their bodies seemed too thin before that ancient presence about Su Ming. In fact, they did not even have the right to be called old. As the 13 old men's hearts were shaken, Su Ming looked towards them with an indifferent gaze. His eyes were like swamp water, completely calm, but if anyone took a closer look, they would immediately get lost in them. The profound expression in his eyes was hidden deep within them, and even contained a slight presence that would cause others to be compelled to believe in him. It was as if, under this gaze, everything Su Ming said could be trusted. This was the power that would exist as long someone believed in it. This was the epiphany Su Ming had obtained from the 3 gates of heavenly Tao. Once he fused that epiphany with his illusions of the stars, sun, and moon, it could be said that this divine ability became the strongest and most mysterious of all his divine abilities. Once he used it, the weather would change, and the world would be void of light. "Do you believe in me?" Su Ming asked coolly. He had just recovered from the strange picture in his mind, which was why that ancient air remained about him while the figure of the man with white hair remained in his heart. In fact, even the man's grief as he looked at the sky remained in Su Ming's eyes. That ancient presence, that figure, that grief, and everything that remained about Su Ming at that moment erupted from within him in an unseen manner as he asked that question. Because of it, the air in the underground palace distorted, and ripples spread out through the area and fill it swiftly. In an instant, they filled up the entire underground palace. There was a strange power contained in his voice. As it echoed in the air, even the green candle flames in the place swayed a few times. In fact, during that instant, Su Ming's appearance seemed to have changed as well, giving off an indistinct feeling to others. It was as if he had turned into the man with white hair during that moment, who had his hands placed behind his back as he looked at the sky while the world collapsed around him. This was not Su Ming's power, but the residue of the power he saw while understanding it. In fact, it could be said that this was Su Ming using the power of that man with white hair, who had been able to form a terrifying divine ability with just a single sentence he left behind. This form of borrowing the man's power was only possible for Su Ming at this moment. Even if he tried to gain another epiphany from the sentence, he would not be able to do this, because once he completed the process of understanding the sentence, it had disappeared into the 3 gates of heavenly Tao, vanishing to return to the time in which it belonged. Unless Su Ming could truly understand it, then this divine ability of his would have reached its strongest at this moment. Indescribably powerful booms rang out in the hearts of the 13 old men who were all in the later stage of world plane realm. In the mid of those sounds, Su Ming's voice shot up in all their ears, their minds, and their souls. That voice brought with it a tone that suggested the owner would allow no doubt and resistance to his words, an arrogance that even the world would have to submit and even the universe would have to lower its head. If any forms of life did not obey him, then no matter what level of cultivation they possessed, they would instantly be reduced to ashes. The booming sound echoed in the hearts of the 13 old men. They coughed up a mouthful of blood and had blood pouring out of their eyes, mouth, nose, and ears. They staggered backwards, and once they moved thousands of feet, they were pale and had shock written on their faces. In their eyes, a ball of fire was contained. That was a purple ball of fire. It was a ball of fire that burned even hotter than the zeal they had for Yu family's progenitor. Even Yu Ru coughed up blood when the residue of that presence erupted from Su Ming's body and she was continuously forced backwards. Her calmness was gone, her elegance had vanished, and everything within her mind was shredded to pieces during that moment. A single will forcefully made its way into her head. It was a will that compelled her to obey Su Ming. And the same ball of purple flames also appeared in her eyes. "I believe in you." Yu Ru's breathing quickened. As she mumbled out these words, the 13 old men let out zealous roars. "I believe in you. I believe in you." The 13 voices reverberated in the air, and endless echoes rang through the underground palace. As they continued spreading outwards, there was a false impression that the underground palace itself was trembling. As they said these words, Su Ming slowly closed his eyes. The residue of the ancient presence about him disappeared, and his body was no longer an indistinct blur. "Your power is to let others believe in you and worship you from the bottom of their hearts. For myself, I will choose to make them obey me." Su Ming opened his eyes. His appearance was strange and enchanting, and the light in his eyes gave others a feeling like they were looking at an endless abyss. Chapter 879. Evil as the voices of the 13 old men echoed in the underground palace, the grey fog on their bodies started tumbling about. It originally served the purpose of providing shade from the sun, but that moment, when Su Ming lifted his hand to swing at it, booming sounds rang out. "Those who believe in me will obtain the protection of the Ikang galaxies that I, Su, possess," Su Ming stated flatly. As he swung his arm, the noise from the fog reached its peak, but soon, the sound disappeared. The fog dispersed to reveal 13 skeletal old men prostrating themselves on the ground. They might only be skin and bones, but there was a presence within them that made it seem as if there was a windstorm contained within them. "Thank you for granting us a new life, progenitor." The 13 old men's faces were filled with zeal. The purple flames in their eyes burned furiously, and once they replaced their pupils, their eyes turned purple. That purplish hue in their eyes did not remain stiff and unchanging, but contained the sparkle of life that each person should have. Once these 13 men said their reply, the residue of the ancient presence about Su Ming's body returned to where it should belong, in the passages of time. "The Yu family will remain the Yu family. It will be enough for all of you here to know about my existence. You may all leave now." "Yu Ru, stay back," Su Ming said calmly and walked forward. With one step, he moved into the innermost part of the underground palace. There was a flight of stairs there. This area was built like an altar, and there was a gigantic stone chair there. Su Ming stood in front of the stone chair, then turned around and slowly sat down on the stone chair. At the instant he did so, an awe-inspiring presence spread out from his body and filled up the entire area. He referred to himself with his family name before these people. Before this, he would have definitely not done such a thing. However, as of then, these 13 old men as well as Yu Ru had been turned into existences that were similar to that of an apostle after Su Ming used that residue of the ancient presence and the art of believing on them. Su Ming was doing the exact same thing as what the sun god and moon goddess did to turn others into their apostles after making people believe in them. The 13 old men immediately voiced their obedience. They lowered their heads and left. Soon, they would appear before the Yu family and would shock all of its members, who would then burn with zeal because of them. In fact, they would bring the Yu family to open the curtains to a new struggle for power in Black Ink Planet. Perhaps they would still be unable to lead their family to become the greatest family in Black Ink Planet, but it was more than likely that they would escape their current state. They would become the leading family for all middle-sized auction halls. When the 13 old men left, Yu Ru lowered her head and knelt quietly in front of Su Ming. She did not say a single word. Even when the area around them was enveloped in dead silence once again, Su Ming still did not speak. Instead, he sat on the stone chair and stared at Yu Ru. Time trickled by, and Yu Ru gradually found that she could not keep a calm expression on her face. The purple flames in her eyes were burning furiously, and confusion as well as struggle slowly appeared on her face. "Give me a reason why I should not kill you." Su Ming's voice broke the silence, and his words echoed in the air. "My lord, why would you want to kill me?" Yu Ru lifted her head to reveal her face, which possessed a beauty that could cause hearts to pound in excitement and could take a man's breath away. "Is it because I hid the secrets of the enchanted treasure piece arrives when the elephant is here? Progenitor Yu Han might have planned this for tens of thousands of years, but he is not a god. He cannot be considered an antecedental spirit, much less an ancestral spirit. He is just a cultivator who is a succeeding spirit. If a cultivator who is just a succeeding spirit like him could truly possess you, then you would not be the apostle. As long as you were the apostle, Progenitor Yu Han could only fail," Yu Ru whispered softly. Her voice was incredibly pleasant to the ears, and it moved gently through the underground palace. "Not enough." Su Ming shook his head. Yu Ru bit her bottom lip. After remaining silent for a moment, she spoke once again. "Progenitor Yu Han might be an ancestor of the Yu family, but he tried to possess me before. He might have failed in the end, but I will never forget this. I wanted him dead. I wanted him to be killed by the apostle after he failed to possess him. In fact, I once had the thought that I would no longer need to be afraid if the progenitor was possessed by the apostle." Su Ming had a calm expression on his face. This time, he did not open his mouth to speak, but neither did he shake his head. Instead, he closed his eyes and waited for Yu Ru to continue speaking. She lowered her head and fell silent for a time. "I knew since the start that you weren't the apostle." After a long while, Yu Ru lifted that enticing head of hers and looked at Su Ming. "You might have the presence of the sun god and moon goddess on you, and you might have walked out of the second gate, but I know that you devoured the spirits of the sun god and moon goddess in the second gate of heavenly Tao. At the instant you began devouring them, they sent word to me and ordered me to have the entire Yu family prevent you from devouring them. In fact, if I had chosen to obey them at that moment, then at the moment you started absorbing the souls of the sun god and moon goddess, the 13 progenitors would have attacked, and even you would have found it hard to withstand their attacks." Yu Ru's face was slightly pale. The purple flames were burning in her eyes and were rapidly enveloping her heart and soul. She was not like the 13 old men. They might have incredibly high levels of cultivation, but they did not have a power in them to resist that strange divine ability Su Ming had cast. This was a form of oppression from a superior life form on an inferior life form. However, Yu Ru was different. She was, after all, the chosen one by the sun god and moon goddess. She might not have fulfilled the conditions to be possessed by progenitor Yu Han, but she was clearly different from the average cultivator. Su Ming opened his eyes to reveal a pair of profound eyes as he asked indifferently, "What do you know of ancestral spirit, antecedental spirit, and succeeding spirit?" "This is a legend. Due to the age of the legend, there should be no one who knows whether it is true or false." Yu Ru hesitated for a moment before she chose to tell Su Ming all that she knew. Legend has it that when the sky, the earth, the universe, the heavens, the galaxy, and the cosmos had yet to take form, the first living things that were born were known as ancestral spirits. They created life, which is why we have so many races and so many different types of living beings. These living beings worshipped the ancestral spirits. In the endless passage of time, among the races that did so, life forms that could bear the power of the ancestral spirits slowly came into existence. They were known as antecedental spirits. Some people believe that the word antecedental refers to immortals, since the immortals' Tao will eventually turn them into gods, but there are some that believe that the word antecedental refers to the binary opposite before and after. Since the era was different, the words were different. However, the meaning behind them was the same, despite the fact that the words weren't alike. After saying this much, Yu Ru paused for a moment before she spoke again. "A disaster no one knows about caused all manner of living to die or fall to sleep. It didn't matter whether it was the ancestral spirits or those who became antecedental spirits due to their worship were able to escape from the disaster. As the disaster went on, the races fell to ruin. They were either dissolved or destroyed, and in the end, they were no more. This was the case for the Gate of Tao race. In the endless passage of time after the disaster, there were no longer any ancestral spirits or antecedental spirits, but the people could see the changes in the universe, could see the world, the planets, could sense the rules and laws in the universe, and from then on, consolidate some of the cultivation methods to slowly create their own cultivation systems. It was a cultivation system that aimed to achieve perfection and become a superior life form. The system for each race was different, but their goal was the same. Over the course of time, the outstanding ones who practiced this sort of cultivation system were known as succeeding spirits. By now, even succeeding spirits are incredibly rare, and due to dissemination and growth of the numerous races in the universe, the people who practice these sort of cultivation systems are known as cultivators. Based on the ancient titles, some of them could be known as succeeding spirits. The sun god and moon goddess were antecedental spirits, and they were very ancient. In fact, I suspect that their slumber had caused them to fall to being life forms that were only succeeding spirits. Yu Ru spoke softly, her words echoing in the underground palace, but Su Ming's expression remained calm as he digested them. After a moment, he asked coolly, "What is yin essence?" His question immediately caused Yu Ru's face to turn slightly paler. She did not speak, but with anguish on her face, she slowly lowered her head and lifted her hands to gradually undress before Su Ming. As her robes fell off to reveal a skin-tight singlet that showed off her beautiful figure, her pretty face and figure brought about an image that could make others' hearts pound. It was a feast that no one could refuse. The power of yin essence is a type of divine essence that I obtained in the second gate of heavenly Tao. It slowly grows in my body, pushing my level of cultivation to its peak. It will allow me to become a life form in between succeeding spirits and successor spirits. I may even be able to reach a breakthrough and become a successor spirit. At that time, I will be summoned by my mission and will offer up everything of myself to the moon goddess. If you could devour the moon goddess in the second gate of heavenly Tao, then you can definitely devour my yin essence. I can give it to you as long as you give me my freedom back, so I won't be a puppet who can't control its own fate. Yu Ru lifted her head. The burning purple flames in her eyes had almost replaced all of her pupils. She looked at Su Ming with her pale face as she walked close to him. Su Ming's expression was calm. Not a hint of change could be spotted on him. When Yu Ru gradually came over to stand in front of him, he looked at her beautiful form and continued watching as she slowly lowered her body, as if she was kneeling down to worship him. He lifted his right hand and placed it on her skin, which looked as if it would break if the wind so much as blew on it, then began to slowly trace his finger through the spots where her curves were. Wherever his finger went, that part of Yu Ru's body would immediately begin trembling from nervousness. When Su Ming's finger slid to her face, he lifted her chin, forcing her head up. Then, he slowly got closer to her, to the point that they could sense each other's breathing and heartbeat. No matter what reason it is, those who scheme against me will never know freedom in their lives again, he said softly. His words made Yu Ru tremble, and her face turned even paler. Judging by the method with which you will offer up your yin essence, you will clearly become my woman, but your yin essence is not enough of a compensation for you to become my woman. Su Ming lifted his head. There was a smile on his lips. A strange light shone in his eyes, giving him an indescribable, mysterious, and enchanting air. Yu Ru lowered her head and whispered softly, "Has anyone told you before that you give others a feeling that you're incredibly evil?" Evil. I like that word. Su Ming stood up and took a step forward before he disappeared into the underground palace, leaving behind Yu Ru still wearing her skin-tight singlet and a complicated expression on her face. Chapter 880. Getting to know Lai Shan. This was a season with ample rain in Black Ink Planet. It had been cloudy for several days, and on this day, rain poured down from the sky. The rain fell on the ground, filling the entire world with an indistinct feeling. Su Ming was sitting cross-legged in one of the towers of the Yu family while looking at the rain outside his window. There was a scroll made of jade slips placed in front of him. On it was the map of Black Ink Planet, the forces of power in it and the locations of each auction hall. In fact, there was a large portion of Divine Essence Star Ocean depicted on that jade slip scroll as well. However, while that portion might seem large, in truth, Compared to the vast divine essence star ocean, the area drawn on the map by the members of the Yu family over the countless years was just a small part of that huge galaxy. Su Ming had picked up the scroll, but he did not immediately look at it. Instead, he looked at the rain outside the window with a pensive look in his eyes. The elephant has two forms. One of them is its physical form, and the other is the illusory form on the scale. The physical body of the elephant on the scale is like that of the form of the heavenly Tao, not the power of the antecedental spirit. The thought of weighing this elephant is like a fantasy, and it can allow you to weigh this elephant for the span of 3 breaths. The words spoken when the malicious spirit weighed the elephant while he was in the chamber echoed in Su Ming's mind. This sentence isn't that easy to understand, but now that I think about it, this elephant has 2 forms means that it has a physical and an illusory form. The physical form is the elephant's real body, and the illusion is the scene that people usually speak of. In some sense, this elephant is not referring to a living creature, but a form of atmosphere and environment. A sparkle appeared in Su Ming's eyes. If that's the case, then I can understand the second and third sentences. Weighing the elephant's real body is like weighing the supreme lord of the gate of Tao race. But all life forms who have yet to become antecedental spirits are unable to do this. Only those who are antecedental spirits can do so. The third sentence can also be understood as weighing an atmosphere and an illusion, but what does the final "it can allow you to weigh this elephant for the span of 3 breaths" mean? Su Ming remained silent for a moment before he shook his head and buried the question in his heart. His gaze fell on the jade slip scroll, and he began looking through it. There was a storage bag beside Su Ming. Once every few breaths, he would put his hand deep into that storage bag, then bring out a crystal to place it on the scroll. That crystal would flash a few times before fusing into the scroll. The jade slip scroll was incredibly mysterious. Perhaps it was because it had been around for a long time, but it would be damaged every time someone examined it. Because of this, it would need to be nourished by crystals once in a while if its contents were examined. There was a veil on Yu Ru's face, who was nearby. Her temperament currently was greatly different from before. In fact, even the ripples of power from her cultivation base were incredibly weak. She looked as if she was only in the initial stage of World Plane Realm and not the later stage of World Plane Realm, which she originally had. She sat on her heels by Su Ming's side quietly. She was sitting in the mid of the green smoke spreading out from the censers in the room, which gave her an otherworldly feeling. There was a pot of wine boiling in front of her. She lifted the pot up with her fair hands and poured the contents gently into a wine cup before she placed it by Su Ming, who was still reading through the jade slip scroll. Her appearance and her actions made it look as if she was a maidservant. This was supposed to be a very artistic scene. Faint green smoke swirled about in the air, an otherworldly maidservant served by her master's side, rain poured outside the window, the rushing of it echoed in the air like the noise of nature. But in this scene, there were 3 things that did not fit in. The bald crane was rolling about on the ground with a displeased look, and it was doing so non-stop. Crystals. You promised me that you would give me crystals. Why you? You're going overboard. There are so many crystals. Give me some. Oh, my crystals. Kill me. Those are all my crystals. You are. How can you put crystals in there? Oh heavens. This is the 379th piece. Those are all crystals, sparkling 379 crystals, you know? As the bald crane screamed shrilly, it stared straight at Su Ming. When it saw him placing the crystals one by one into the jade slip scroll as he read it, the bald crane almost went mad. However, Su Ming completely ignored its shrill screams, and even Yu Ru did not bother with it. She looked at the boiling wine with an elegant expression on her face, as if she did not hear a single thing. The other thing that did not fit in was a big yellow dog. It was lying not too far away and staring at Yu Ru with a hostile look, occasionally letting out threatening growls. It was as if Yu Ru's existence made it sense some form of threat, for some unknown reason. Damn it! How could a woman as pretty as my young mistress be around here? Judging by Su Ming's actions, he has clearly acknowledged her damned presence. I can't allow this. Thoughts fleeted through the big yellow dog's head as it continued thinking about what its young mistress would do if she was around. The threatening glare and hostile look became increasingly more pronounced. The final thing that did not fit in was Yu Chen Hai. He sat calmly by the side, having been the one who gave Su Ming the jade slip scroll. Occasionally, he would look at Su Ming, but most of the time, he would sneak peeks at Yu Ru. He constantly felt that there was something familiar about that woman, but for some unknown reason, he could not remember where he had seen her before, but this was not the main point. It, of course, was that even though the woman wore a veil over her face and covered most of her looks, preventing others from seeing her clearly, there was still a beauty about her that caused other people's hearts to pound in excitement. This beauty caused Yu Chenhai's heart to race. This shouldn't be. With my level of cultivation, this shouldn't happen, but why is this woman giving me a sense of closeness? It's precisely because of this sense of closeness that I'm feeling such a great urge in me. It was with great difficulty that Yu Chenhai quelled the feeling in his heart. He no longer dared to look at the woman, worried that he would make Su Ming misunderstand him. That was why, even though he still wanted to look at her, he had to force that urge down. Senior Su, there are 3 days left before I have to host my auction, he quickly said in a low voice. Su Ming's status had already changed in the Yu family. To the others, he was a guest, but the members of the family were not privy to the real truth. I understand. Su Ming nodded. He picked up a crystal and placed it on the jade slip scroll to continue reading it. About that, if you have time, should we look at the other family's auctions and get familiar with how an auction operates? Yu Chenhai quickly asked. Su Ming looked as if he did not hear his words and did not answer. Yu Chenhai smiled wryly, not knowing what he should say next. He instinctively looked towards Yu Ru again, and at the moment he looked at her, she lifted her head and cast him a glance as well. Then, for some unknown reason, the hint of a faint smile appeared on her lips under the veil. When Yu Chenhai saw that smile, his heart trembled. Then, unable to control himself, he became infatuated with her as he continued looking at her. With the 3 discordant elements in the picture, the atmosphere in the tower became slightly strange. Su Ming continued reading the jade slip scroll, his right hand reaching deep into the storage bag to take out crystals from time to time. He had already read through most of the jade slip scroll, and what remained were a few things that had happened in Black Ink Planet during the past 10,000 years. At that moment, he picked up a crystal, but just as he was about to place it on the jade slip scroll, his right hand came to an abrupt halt. As his right hand stopped moving, a feeling as if something was being held back immediately appeared in the room. This feeling was instantly noticed by Yu Ru. The bald crane was also momentarily stunned and stopped rolling out while screeching, but instead looked at Su Ming with surprise. Even the big yellow dog, which had been looking at Yu Ru with a hostile expression, blinked a few times before it looked at Su Ming. Only Yu Chenhai remained besotted and could not get himself out of it. Lai Shan family rose to power in Black Ink Planet 10,000 years ago. The progenitor of the family is Lai Shan Xiao. His origins are mysterious and unfathomable, and his level of cultivation is incredibly high. He is a man of great talent and vision, and in 10,000 years, he brought his family into the list of those who can host middle-sized auctions. This was the sentence Su Ming saw in the jade slip. Lai Shan Xiao is an ambitious and formidable person. His origins might not be known, but he must definitely be a renowned person in the galaxy from which he came. However, even after the numerous investigations conducted on him, not a single clue can be found about this person from Divine Essence Star Ocean or the 4 great galaxies in the world outside. Su Ming had a calm expression on his face, but a huge storm was raging in his heart. In fact, that storm had turned into loud, thunderous booms that roared and reverberated in his mind. His calmness was just a facade. He might have had a few speculations previously, but when he truly discovered it, he could not find it in himself to remain calm. This was why even his right hand had come to a pause when he was about to place the crystal on the jade slip scroll, and even some of his presence spread out slightly, creating that feeling as if something was being held back in the tower. Several breaths later, that feeling evaporated. Su Ming placed the crystal on the jade slip scroll and continued reading the scroll. After the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, he closed his eyes. Lai Shan Xiao. Yu Chenhai, didn't you mention that you wanted to look at the other family's auctions earlier? Su Ming opened his eyes and turned his head to look at Yu Chenhai, but when he looked over, he frowned, and a strange expression gradually crept up his face. That moment, Yu Chenhai was looking at Yu Ru with a stupefied face. The besotted expression in his eyes could be felt clearly by all. As for Yu Ru, she remained as calm as ever, as if she was completely not bothered by how a member of the younger generation in her family was looking at her in such an infatuated manner. Su Ming let out a dry cough, and Yu Chen-hai shuddered, snapping out of his daze. When he saw that Su Ming was looking at him, he instantly felt cold sweat drench his robes. His face turned pale. He could already imagine what would happen, and fear rose in his heart. He did not know what had come over him. When the maidservant smiled at him, he had lost his senses and sank into that infatuated state. When he snapped out of it, intense fear immediately filled his heart. He was afraid that Su Ming would be displeased. Senior. Yu Chen-hai was just about to explain as he was filled uneasiness. Su Ming cut off Yu Chen-hai's explanations and asked faintly, "Does Lai Shan family have an auction?" Lai Shan family is a family that can host middle-sized auctions, and they host small auctions once every 3 days. There will be one today. Yu Chen-hai quickly nodded. "Let's go. Lead the way, we'll go to Lai Shan family's auction." Su Ming stood up. When he spoke, he walked towards the entrance. The bald crane blinked and exchanged glances with the big yellow dog. They immediately moved at the same time and followed Su Ming. Yu Ru stood up incredibly elegantly and put away the pot of wine, then sashayed behind Su Ming. Yu Chen-hai let out a huge breath of relief in his heart at that moment and quickly followed after. He looked at Yu Ru's curvaceous body and suddenly remembered how rude he had been, though Su Ming did not seem to be bothered by it, and this maidservant who appeared out of nowhere also did not seem to mind. Yu Chen-hai looked as if he had been bewitched. His heart raced, but he did not dare think too much into it and simply followed Su Ming out of the house into the rain.